Hello, friends, and welcome to the Show to Be Named Later podcast. I'm your host, Jonny Voss, and I'm alongside the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings this weekend, Noah Stoerzinger. How's the arm, buddy?
It's feeling good. I had a tryout the other weekend. It was just anyone could show up, so it was a good time. There were a lot of jabronis out there, but it'll be a tough game, Lions. But I think I can come out with a W here, unlike all the other quarterbacks.
Well, and why not? Why not try something? In the musical chair of quarterbacks, it's to me. I kind of like just to see the season done now. There's only so much torture you can put a fan through, and I'm not going to fault the Vikings, for this season. As I think I read Justin Jefferson was saying this is the toughest year he's ever had, probably in football. And he mentioned turnovers, but he mentioned, the rash of injuries. And I think that's probably the main issue here. You can't expect a team to win. Now, this is going to be your fifth quarterback in the last how many games? Albeit it was Mullins that was, previously, but you can't just keep changing quarterbacks, ones that have medium talent at best, and expect this team to be able to gel together, just like that. And so, but then again, we can still hope for a Festivus miracle, because I believe if we beat the Lions, the Packers lose to the Bears. I believe we would need the Seahawks to lose to Arizona, not out of the realm of possibility, and either Tampa or New Orleans to lose, which those all, I'm hoping for a Festivus miracle.
It's I think the crazy part, and I think I think they gave them like a 3% chance, it happens or whatnot. But I think just after these games, it is wild to think about the fact that next week, your Vikings could be in the playoffs, which is just funny to think about. But you're right. I think the season was with all the hope that there was, past weeks when we've been talking and wanting the Vikings to be in the Super Bowl. You absolutely, it's hard to blame one person, right? It's just so many injuries.
I don't even know if you can blame the team at this point. You know what I mean? The defense been sucking lately, and it looks like teams have found ways to beat B-Flow's, his schemes. But like I say, this team has been in such turmoil the entire year that I just don't think that you can go up. We got to get rid of this, that, or the other person. Now that will bring me to my next point, though, because our Mr. General Manager is going to have a lot of decisions next year now, and number one is going to be, because I think the general consensus of most people is that they want Cousins back next year. Right or not?
No, it came out that they will very much pursue Kirk Cousins next year.
Because and so that would mean that you're going to have to put some money into it, even if it's just a 2-year deal. You table that with the kind of contract that Jefferson's going to get, because you have to sign him. That's a no-brainer. It's not, we didn't even talk about Danielle Hunter, or down the road. There are a lot of glaring question marks on this roster going into next season. And so it's going to really be interesting, because, I was reading the Star Tribune this morning, and it said, Quincy, it's his draft picks are really going to be the big deal. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but his drafts have not gone so well since he's taken the reins. And so, I don't know if you can rely on saying, okay, I'm going to hope for drafts that are going to actually make a difference going into next season already. So that's really going to make the Cousins thing a delicate situation, especially with the fact that Jefferson's still not signed.
Yeah, it's because I was going to bring up the draft picks too. It just, I don't know what any other option they have when they're so cap strapped at this point. When you mention, Daniil Hunter's contract, Jefferson's going to get paid, Cousins is going to require some pretty big contract at this point. And I think you're just going to need to bank on some of these guys that maybe we think that Kwesi hasn't hit on yet. They're going to need some rebounds, especially in some of these defensive positions. And I think he's going to have to hit in 3 or 4 of these.
Well,
picks.
but that's what I'm saying. I think he took 3 or 4 players early were defensive players that have done nothing for this team at all. And so going in the next year, I think is going to be a make or break situation for him, because you can't afford to say this is going to be, you can't sign a guy like Cousins saying, but, oh, by the way, this is going to be a rebuilding year, and so I'm really curious how this is all going to play out, because the secondary is a huge concern. Harrison Smith, they're not going to dole out big bucks for him for another 2 years, right? And so your secondary is your main concern, but man, you lose that edge rusher, Daniil Hunter. That means the whole defense is completely a different story. And you still got to work on that offensive line, and you have no running backs. So
right, and that's it's who. So your first, let's just say, the Vikings lose this week. I think that the best they can do is 9th in the draft. Let's say you get the 9th pick. I don't need a name, but what position are you going after in the first round?
Well, that was one of the things that was talked about, in the Star Tribune column that I read, and said you could still sign Cousins for 2 years, which is what, $36 million, something like that, if you're lucky. And you could still take a quarterback. I don't think a Michael Penix is going to be around at 9 or 12. You never know. Yep. There are quarterbacks coming out, and you could still sign Cousins and make a long-term or an idea of a long-term commitment to a very talented quarterback coming in. Do I think that that's going to happen? That's the way that the Vikings roll. I don't. He's no good at picking defensive backs, that's for sure. So, I mean, I don't know. And I always look at the NFL draft kind of as it's got to be different than baseball or basketball or something like that. I mean, it is such a crapshoot when it comes to that. And so even if you get the best quarterback in the draft, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be golden, Johnny Manziel. So, I mean, it's hard to think in that category. But then you get guys like Addison or Jefferson who were can't miss guys. You know what I mean? And I guess you need a draft like that that's going to buoy the spirits of Minnesota Vikings fans.
Yeah, and I mean, to the offense credit, I'm wondering, besides a quarterback, where do you go in the draft? Now, I don't know how long Hawkinson's going to be out. He's probably going to be out a decent chunk of next year, I would have to assume, as he tore his ACL or whatever it was. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. Now, if we're talking about, I think quarterback has always been at the forefront of, is that who the Vikings are going to go after in round 1, whatever it may be. Let's say they do that. You still got a guy in Jaren Hall on your roster. What happens to Jaren Hall?
Boy, I don't know. And obviously you can't judge a guy on he's played 1 drive and 1 half. I don't know if you can judge a career by that, but certainly was not prepared for the starting job the other night. It didn't look like anybody in purple was prepared for that game at all. That was just embarrassing. I don't care if you've got a rookie quarterback with no experience out there or not. There's no way that you lose the Packers in that kind of fashion. You know what I mean? I think Jaren Hall, I don't know, third string quarterback. I mean, if the Vikings go after a quarterback in the draft next year, I got to think because they're going to go after somebody that they think is going to be the future. So that might put a damper on Mr. Hall's ideas of a career here in Minnesota. But what are you going to do? You know, I mean, I would like to think the Vikings are going to look for a quarterback, but I think they'll give us the same as what they always do. We're going to look for the best player at whatever position that's available at the draft at that time. That's going to help us win games.
Is a Trey Lance someone you would look at trading for?
Nope.
Right.
History. I don't know. I'm a history teacher. Those who don't know history are forced to repeat it. What that guy looked about as prepared as Jalen Hall. Now I know you got special, roots with him because he's an NSU guy, right? But I that's one guy I don't want. And then the other one that really pissed me off that everybody is saying that's locked to this team right now is Russell fucking Wilson. And that I might have to take a year off if the Vikings were to trade for him.
I think every Vikings fan's opinion is about the same as yours. So I don't know. I'm assuming the odds came out that way just based on the fact that we are so up in the air with our quarterback position next year. But I don't know who's going to pay or really want to pay that guy a big amount of money, or maybe it's a rebuilding team.
Well, we don't know. We don't know what shape Cousins is going to be in. Some guys do bounce back from that injury and some don't. So you might be putting the cart before the horse just a little bit because you don't know if you're going to get the same kind of Kirk Cousins that you got right before the injury coming in for his swan song, so to speak. Now, Aaron Rodgers, he's done. Is that right?
We'll see. I mean, he was obviously done for this year, but
I thought maybe he's done career-wise, but I could be wrong. I might be jumping the gun there.
Well,
that's what I think is going to happen.
I don't know what the Jets do based off of what he had said the last couple of days, but we'll see.
Okay, all righty. I don't think I really want to talk too much college football because just wasn't interested in it. You know what I mean? It didn't. I watched a little bit of the Ohio State game, but the bowl situation this year has been really disappointing and has not been fun to watch at all. Nobody's playing games. You're talking about third string guys. Come on. You're talking about third string guys who are declaring themselves eligible for the NFL draft so they don't play in these bowl games. I don't know what the point of having 972 bowl games for 250 some teams is, but it's been disappointing. At least the games haven't been blowouts because usually it's 62-0 or something like that, and at least the semis have been pretty good.
Well, I was gonna say, to be honest, I think I watched a Gophers game and I watched a little bit of the Florida State game, to be honest, but other than that, I really didn't tune into any of it because, to your point, I didn't care. I didn't care.
And I'm sorry, not the Michigan or not the Ohio State game, the Michigan game. I watched a little bit of that just because of Big Ten. And Michael Penix Jr., old Ohio State guy. I mean, he looked pretty sharp for Washington, but just in the age of super conferences and whatnot, just in Super Bowls in college, I'm just not interested. So we'll switch the subject there. For the first time, the last team in the NBA to have a losing streak, our Minnesota Timberwolves, have lost 2 in a row now. First time this year, the last team in the NBA to lose back-to-back games. And I think we knew it was coming. And I'm not ready to panic quite yet at all. I think when you play the caliber of teams that they've been playing in the last few weeks, every single night, it starts to drain on you. We talked about it before, and I think it's draining now.
It absolutely is. And That's where I'm just a little frustrated, I think, with some fans on Twitter, because I understand we haven't lost that many games. So when you do lose, yeah, it's frustrating because you're not used to it this year. But my God, man, it's not the end of the world, and that's what it is. It seems like to me is just castrating Cat and just wanting to get Kyle Anderson off your team and want is just I don't understand it because look, the last time we lost 2 games in a row regular season was over 280 days or
Yeah.
something, which is crazy. Um, but we're in the middle, well, towards the end of the gauntlet here, and I think we're like 8-4 or something in this thing, which is a great. Like if you would have looked at when we looked at this stretch of
Eight
games,
and
we were
five, I believe we are.
8-5.
Yep.
When we looked at this stretch of games, it was scary. Like you were like, well,
Yep.
this could be it. And to this day, the Wolves are still in first place in the Western Conference standings. So, we're in the new year. We're in 2024, and the Wolves have held first place in the conference standings for months now at this point. OKC's a little scary, I'm not going to lie, but
Yeah, they lost last night though.
they did. But look, we're playing tough teams, and I think it is a little bit of. I think Rudy Gobert put it pretty nicely. He's like, when you keep winning, you get a little soft because you just kind of forget. I think what makes your team really good, and when you lose, it's a little bit of a wake up call. And I think that's obviously what teams needs. And you can't tell me the Nuggets or the Warriors, whoever, like they don't go through these lulls during their championship seasons, right?
Absolutely.
Like every team goes through them, and we are at that point right now. I don't want to call it a big danger sign because there are some concerning things, but at the same time, this is still a great team.
Right. Something that's been different over the last couple of games. The turnovers have been a factor. They just don't have that edge that they've had in so many games this year. And like I say, I'm not worried about it because nobody thought they were going to go 82-0. I didn't think they were going to go 72-10. But speaking of that, I said when we get down to double digit losses, which we're at 9 right now, I believe, then we're back to reality. Okay, then we're an actual NBA functioning team again, and we're close. But I would not expect this team to go the entire year without losing back-to-back games, and to be able to go into the new year without having that happen. I mean, I tip my hat to you guys, and so I'm still okay with everything that's going on here. The one thing I am a little upset about, and maybe you can, because I know you're a Twitter, an Xer, or what do they call it now?
Yeah, it's called X.
X, okay. I know you're more social media than I am, but I just keep seeing Karl Anthony Towns' name associated with the New York fucking Knickerbockers. Why are people still talking about this? And my second question is, why are Timberwolves fans talking about this and saying, well, yeah, that might be something? Why?
So to clear everything up here, it's not Timberwolves fans that are talking about trading Cat. Like maybe there's one or two that just absolutely hate Cat and they got something against him, but trust me, a first place team is not talking about trading their one of their best players. And it is all national media. And it shows you how stupid national media people are to think that Karl Anthony Towns, while he's not playing on a first place team in the Western Conference, is in trade talks with the Knicks. It is not happening whatsoever. Shut up.
Is there now? Are they still trying to hook the Towns for? He had a good game against us, but I don't care for him. Randall, right?
Well, now that they traded,
that's what they're saying though, right? Is the big pieces in this thing?
Well, they just gave up R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly for OG Anunoby, and to be honest, if I'm trading Cat, like I would have wanted one of those two guys on my team, and now that it's not on your team anymore, I'm sorry. Like the pieces on your team, like you're not going to give me Josh Hart, or I don't want Julius Randle because I'd rather have Cat any day of the week. And it's like you could give me 5 or however many first round picks. But like honestly, you're in the race for a championship right now. Like it's just not
Yeah,
happening unless something comes out where he just doesn't want to be on the Wolves anymore and he forces his way out, a la Jimmy Butler. It's not happening.
right. And I haven't heard anything about him being dissatisfied in Minnesota right now, or that he needs to
He's
go.
winning.
And exactly that's the big point, is that he's never been in first place in the Western Conference before. So I don't think that he's got any. I don't think that he has any fire to leave anytime soon either. I just wanted to put that to rest, because I'm tired of hearing about it and tired of seeing it. And then the same article I see, as I'm because like I say, I'm not on social media very often, and I'm like, but I gotta say, I'm so saddened by this news. I heard it. I think it was last week. It was official. Ricky Rubio is officially retired from the NBA, and he went a little scooters, huh? He went to a dark place or something. I didn't even know he was still on an NBA roster, to tell you the truth. But he's going back to Spain. I think there was talk of him maybe once he gets his head together, he might still play in Spain. But he's just done with the NBA, and okay, don't let the door hit you on your way out.
Well, it was funny actually. My dad texted me today, and he said, I'll be waiting. Is there going to be an ode to Ricky Rubio on the next show? And
Oh, really?
I don't know. But yeah, I think it came out today or yesterday officially that he had announced his retirement, and obviously not fun to go through what he went through. So I applaud him getting through it and everything.
You think that was just based on he just never was comfortable in the United States? Do you think that's the deal?
I don't know, because if you really think about his career, you do need to sympathize a little bit just with the fact of, his first stint in Minnesota wasn't exactly, I think, obviously, playoff success didn't come. He wasn't the guy you build around, though, and I think that's what the old Timberwolves regime had somehow pictured, that Ricky Rubio was the savior of the franchise. And you trade him to Utah, and I think he had some good years in Utah. They finally start to get good, and then they ship him to Phoenix. Same thing. Phoenix gets good, and then they ship him to I believe to us. And he started playing well with Cleveland, and I think he was having a good year. And then this happened. So I don't.
What happened? He had a mental breakdown.
Well, I think he got injured, and he obviously dealt with some injuries towards the end of his career. Which I think can be tough for a guy. So I don't know the full details, but I partially was kind of hoping he'd want to play some more basketball, and was kind of hoping the Wolves might look at signing him to a minimum deal. But it is what it is.
Okay.
That's your opinion.
That's right, and that's why we're here. So all right. Well, moving forward, then I would say I'm not. No, I'm not. It's been tough the last couple of weeks being a fan in Minnesota. It's just not a lot crazy. Now the Minnesota Wild, everybody's hurt on that team, and they've lost 3 in a row, and including a goaltender, which you don't see that happening very often. But times are tough, but they always, like you say, it's a new year, and for me, the really tough time is going to be in about a month or so, when football's off the table. That one stretch between when football ends and baseball begins, when all you have is NBA basketball or college basketball, which I don't have. The Gophers are playing Michigan tonight, and it's on fucking Peacock. Why can't I watch a Gopher fucking basketball game? It's ridiculous. And I'll tell you what, and I'm not kidding on this, the Minnesota United lost a fan because I couldn't ever access their fucking games. Okay. And the Gopher basketball team, which I've watched since I was 4 years old, you might lose me because I'm not going to try to find it on Peacock.
I'm not sure. Well, I don't know how the whole thing works, but because the whole Twins thing is up in the air now too with Valley Sports. So I don't know. I think everyone's
why they screwed Dick Bremer.
Well, I think everyone's sick of the streaming services thing. I don't know
You
what's gonna
heard it
happen,
here
but
first.
I can understand your pain though, because there are plenty of games that I can't watch
I
when
actually
it's on.
wanted to watch the Gopher Michigan game tonight because it's Big Ten. I think the Gophers have only played one game in the Big Ten this year, maybe two. The two, I think. Um,
They've been
so Juwan
they've been
Howard,
losing a little bit though, haven't they?
who's that? The Gophers?
Yeah.
No, they've only been playing the Maine Black Bears. So I think they're 9-3, maybe 10-3.
Okay.
But I think they're maybe 1-1 in the Big Ten. I don't know. I see if I don't know. And you know how does we shoot from the hip sometimes, and our facts aren't always accurate. But if I was able to watch a fucking Gopher game, I would know all these things. But most of their non-conference games were not televised either. And maybe that's just something that I took for granted because I'm an old, grouchy, crabby man, that you could always just watch any Minnesota sports team on, even professional women's hockey, which was on TV last night. But you can't watch the Gophers.
They're 10-3.
10-3 and 1-1 in the Big Ten.
Yep.
Okay.
Who have they lost to?
What's that?
Who have they lost to in the Big Ten?
I think they lost to Ohio State.
Yes.
And that was and they didn't get killed by any stretch. And one guy that came out, I saw an article in the Star Tribune again about I guess Michael Thompson has been a big Gopher athletic supporter, which I thought is cool. I think he still does play-by-play for the Lakers, and he was in town for the Laker game, and he really said some nice things about the program and how important it was for him to come back and support it. And I thought that's pretty cool because the Gophers didn't do anything to try to get your kids to come play here. But, there you go. All right. Next topic. I don't know if you saw this. I just thought this was interesting, and get ready because I told you I'm fired up tonight. So we'll see where this takes us. There's a new bar opening, I believe, in March in Minneapolis, and I believe it's the only the third or the fourth of its kind in the United States, and it's a sports bar that's committed only, like they watch all women's sports, all girls women's sports on their 64 TVs. I believe it's called a bar of their own, like a league of their own kind of deal. I think it's a great concept. I think I really, and I will go and support that because I think that's a great idea. Apparently if you can find it streamed somewhere, they will put that game up there. So if you've got a niece, that plays club sports soccer in Woodbury, and there's a camera there that, you just ask them, they'll put it up there. I got a former student, I think she's playing at Utah State right now, which are very tough games to get here. But I think you can go to a place like that and they'd be able to find it there. I think it's a great idea. I think it's great for women's sports. However, I don't know what that looks like, if we're a country that can't really, decide on what a man or what a woman is, and I'm not trying to get political here. This is a sports show, a sports talk show, and this is sports that we're talking about. You know what I mean? But because I did kind of want to get into that, and I just want to get your thoughts. And like I say, it's not political or anything like that. It's just there's a lot of things going on in the sporting world around that topic, and I just wondered if young people like you, if you guys even talk about it, you're aware of it, or what your feelings are on it.
I wouldn't say I have strong opinions. I mean, I grew up playing sports when this wasn't a whole thing. You know what I mean? As for the bar, I think it's phenomenal. I think I didn't even know, I thought they were just playing pro female sports on there. I didn't know you could just, whatever female games up there. Cause that's great when it comes to growing. I mean, you hear the whole thing about the WNBA, it just needs people to grow the game. And I think stuff like this, it's small, but it does something, right? It's a cool concept, but I don't know. I mean, it's really not a huge topic of I don't want to say concern for me, but I mean to not or to prevent going super political, like it's
Well, right, but without getting political, like because I think that I'm going to talk about some points that really don't have anything to do with right or left or blue or red or anything like that. They're just normal questions that I guess a grumpy old man at 50 has. I saw, I believe it's been 41 years since they passed Title IX for the NCAA, and I saw them celebrating that. I think that was about a year ago when it was the 40th anniversary. And I thought, now, but that's interesting because you're celebrating something that is going to bat as it should for women and for girls, but yet you have a University of Pennsylvania swimmer who is not only beating folks, but he's breaking Ivy League records and is not, whatever. And so I'm confused about exactly what stand that you take or what side of it you're on, where you say, well, this is fair, this is not fair. You understand my question now? I mean, I believe the NBA, like, what would it take in this world, Noah? Would it take something crazy like, for instance, let's say Ja Morant. Suddenly overnight, he becomes Jacqueline Morant, okay? And he goes to the WNBA and he averages 70 points a game. Because do I think that could happen? Yes, I do, okay? Would it take something ridiculous like that to happen for people to finally say, well, you know what? I don't know about this. Do you understand where I'm coming from? I'm not trying to get into weird. I just don't get the rules on how this works.
yeah, and I think I don't know because I think we're riding a line right now of unfortunately everything can be taken political now, whatever you say, and that's why I think we're riding this thin line of it. But you brought up a decent point of like, if LeBron James went to the WNBA and just started balling out, like, is that a big enough thing rather than, oh, a swimmer is breaking all these records where no offense, no one's really watching swimming all that much. But that's where I think, yeah,
I mean, would they if it came the college basketball? Okay, if you had a Ja Morant who decided not to go to Murray State as a biological male, but went as a transgender woman and was averaging 70 points a game, which would not be out of the realm of possibility. Then would it be a big deal? And hey, whoa, we can't let this happen because you're making a mockery of the fucking game.
I think you would still have a group of people that would still be okay with it, as there is right now. I think you would have a larger group of people. Personally, this is just my opinion. I think you'd have a larger group of people that would be, to your point, a little bit like, maybe this is not what it should be, right? I mean, there's a lot of different, like, is it, do you have men's sports, women's sports, and then transgender, like a league of their own type of thing? I don't know. Like it's interesting. I don't know.
Well, it is. And I have this, I have this debate and discussion with some of my friends who have daughters who are in girls athletics and who didn't see a problem with what we were talking about the swimmer in Pennsylvania or anything like that. But I said, but no, wait a minute. I said, what if your daughter, let's say her junior year, let's say she was in track and field and her event in track and field was the 200 meters and she got very, very close to winning state, her junior year. But she knew she didn't get it. She got second place. She knew her senior year that it was going to happen. She was going to be a state champion. And something like that, suddenly that next year got in the way of that because according to science, no offense, but men physically have a little edge when it comes to women in certain areas physically, right? I said, how would you feel about that? That your daughter would get pretty much hosed out of a state championship because of that? Would it be different then if it personally affects somebody compared to I can watch it from the outside at a Mickey's Diner and from the outside looking in and say, well, it doesn't affect my world, so I can make all of these opinions and judgments this way unless it actually personally affected you or your family or somebody that you knew. I would think that it would be a little different. You understand what I'm trying to say there?
Yeah. What did they say to that? I'm curious.
A lot of him and hawing and not really saying this or that. It was never the answer I would have wanted. Like that would have sucked. That there's no way that would have happened. You know what I mean? Like I would have allowed that, but it wasn't. Because everybody is so afraid to say either what's on their mind or what they think somebody else wants to hear. It seems like these days, and so they're not gonna shoot from the hip.
Yeah, I think I mean, like these conversations have come up. I mean, I've met people that are not okay with it, and I've met people that are okay with it. I think right now, like I can't say to me like it's happening at a smaller level than I think. Like again, to your point, like if it came up to a larger level, I think this would be an even larger topic of conversation, and you'd have probably some more rules and whatnot about it. I know some states are making rules about it and everything. To be honest, I've met more females, I think, that are not okay with it, to your point of how it would affect them, compared to people that are okay with it. So I don't know, how many people in the world are okay with it compared to not okay with it, but it'll be interesting to see how it, to your point, like how it affects sports at a higher level when it gets there. Cause I do think we'll hit a point when it'll reach a higher level.
Well, now, and you have seen, like, because we talked about, and like I say, we've talked about that in this podcast before. You keep your politics out of our sports. But like I say, this is a part of sports. Now, when I look, I don't know if you've seen the whole Sage Steele thing that's been happening with ESPN. Have you kept your eye on that at all?
I feel like I heard a little bit about it.
Okay, but and she's claiming part of it. Now, she sued Disney and ESPN because they said it was mutual, whatever. She had statements, I think, about COVID or something, and she took sick time under their whatever. She's now claiming that she was told, along with who was that worthless quarterback we had, whose wife does ESPN?
Christian Ponder.
Oh yeah, that we traded down for her to get. That Samantha Ponder was told the same thing. Steele claims that ESPN told her to stop tweeting about her opinion about, I think it was about that Leah Thomas at the University of Pennsylvania. And that, to me, that gets too far. I don't want to see people that I watch on ESPN fighting over politics. I don't. Just like I don't. That's why I don't watch CNN or Fox. You know what I mean? But the reason that I brought this whole thing up is because it is something that, at least at the lower level, because I think you're right. You're like states. I think South Dakota's governor declared that trans can't participate in high school sports. I could be wrong on that, but I know that there are other states that have followed in that area. And so it does. I do have friends who have kids playing sports in high school right now. So it does affect that at a certain deal. And it does affect the way that we watch sports. One of the things I wanted to bring up was, when we talked about Jacqueline Morant switching, to the WNBA. I mean, there is, if you follow that science, there is something to be said about the difference between men and women physically. And, it hadn't happened in the NBA. I believe the New Orleans Jazz in 1977 were the first team, on a second team officially, to actually draft a woman player out of college. I think the Warriors, back when they were called the San Francisco Warriors, I think they did in '69. But Ann Myers out of UCLA was the only woman ever to get a contract in the NBA. And I believe that was either 79 or 80. Incredible female athlete, three-sport star at UCLA, but an incredible basketball player. She got the only woman ever to get a contract with the Indiana Pacers, and she didn't make the last cuts. And since then, we ain't had no Cheryl Miller, no Cheryl Swoops. We haven't had any, I don't think even Diana Taurasi could play in the NBA. It's just one of those things. Not trying to say, oh, Johnny's a dick for saying all these things. It just hasn't happened because there's a reason why it hasn't happened. And so that's why I think, and you know what? We haven't talked about anything fucking controversial on this show anyways. It was time to add a spicy meatball anyways, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's anything crazy. Like you said, yes, obviously, like, I think this is a somewhat political conversation, but it goes into, it affects our sports. Whereas I think our big thing was keep your own opinions about politics out of sports.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it'll be, like I said, I think I think it's scratching the surface of what it could become. And for all we know, maybe it dies in 5 years, whatever, and we keep moving on. But I do think, like, to your point, like, women in men's sports is not necessarily a new thing. Obviously a transgender in a different sport is new, especially to this era that we're in, I think. But so it's not necessarily a completely new topic, but when you're talking about certain aspects, I think, yes, it's different, but I think it'll get to a larger point. And then obviously it'll be interesting to see how those conversations unfold.
Right. All right. Oh, and just a fun fact, I believe the only person to beat Leah Thomas while she was at University of Pennsylvania was another swimmer from the University of Yale who was transgender as well, but hadn't had any of the medical deals going yet. So it was, you know what I'm saying. Okay. All right. That fun fact. All right. Okay. Well, speaking of Ja Morant, I did want to bring this up, and it's not like we're picking on the guy, but I don't care for him too much. And that's my opinion, which I can have. But have you caught any games with him now that the Grizzlies have their star back?
Well, they've been winning good chunk of games. A little confused by his celebration, why he would do something like that.
What did he do? I missed that.
I think he came down for a dunk or something, and he into the crowd did the gun shooting the guns.
So he's learned nothing. He's learned nothing from this. And I got to throw that back to you because we were talking about Anthony Edwards, and you said you don't care. Is it different for a guy like Ja Morant? Do you look at that differently? Maybe because he's not in a Timberwolves uniform, but I mean, to me, I look complete idiot. I think that he got a pretty good deal by only getting 25 game suspension. I really thought that he deserved a year. No, not because I'm a racist. I really believe that stupid actions call for stupid measures. And so, to your point, if he's doing that after a dunk, he's learned nothing. You can't give the guy 6 hours of counseling and expect that to go away, right? And so does that change the way that you look at him as an NBA player?
I look at him differently. And again, I'm sure there will be people out there that call me names for doing that. But look, like there are some people that definitely try to defend what Ja Morant did and saying that it was completely legal. I don't know the whole situation. I don't. What he did, I'm not going to go into it. But when you're doing stuff like that, to me, like comparing it to Anthony Edwards, to me, the Anthony Edwards thing was a personal thing that he is dealing with. This is a matter of what is legal and illegal. If you're doing illegal stuff, yes, everyone are good. You should know if people should know if you're doing illegal things. So that's something where I look at it differently. Like if Anthony Edwards is out there shooting guns and doing shit like that, like yeah, I look at him a little differently. It's the same thing for Ja Morant.
And I gotta give credit because I didn't come up with this on my own, but I gotta give credit. So I was talking about this with my boss the other day, and she made a really good point. She was like, it's not like there isn't apparent persuasion in Ja Morant's case. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times you have NBA players that come from maybe a spot, maybe a one parent household, or they were an at-risk child growing up, or they grew up in some really shady circumstances. And you say, well, they didn't have that parental leadership or guidance to be able to help us. Whatever the fuck. Usher Jr. is in the front row every single night thinking that he is somehow a celebrity based on his kid being an NBA player. His dad's at every game. So there shouldn't be any reason why that motherfucker is getting in any trouble if Usher lookalike would get involved in his kid's life at all instead of trying to play would-be celebrity.
Here's the thing, and Ja Morant, and honestly, every kid now in this generation tries to act hood. I guess if that I sounded like I was 50 years old saying that, but like, look, Ja Morant grew up with both parents. I believe he grew up in a pretty nice household and a nicer area. So to your point, didn't grow up in a bad environment. And he's trying to act like he's someone he's really not. Now, when you watch how his dad acts, it's hard to blame Ja Morant too for seeing how he's acting, because his dad is acting like a dumbass on the court.
I agree. I agree completely.
And I believe his dad was a failed NBA player, and he's probably just living through his kid right now. So
be that as it may, but then fine. Make sure that your meal ticket ain't fucking up. You know what I mean? Like it's that simple. And to give you an idea, Ja Morant has been in the league for a few years now. There was a 19-year-old kid that got drafted by the Minnesota Timberwolves some years ago. And this young man decided to make sure that he did everything. He took classes on how to be more articulate. He took classes on how to deal with the public interviewer. He working on himself so that he could deal with all the things that come with the fame, with the money, with the notoriety. And to me, that was a kid at 19 or 20 years old. Now, whether he had a image consultant saying this is what you need to do, it doesn't matter, because that's what he did. And, back the night Malik Sealy passed away, I was like, man, no, make sure that ticket wasn't a part of drunken driving, or, he got caught, cheating on his wife, or there were guns in the car, there were drugs, nothing. You never heard anything about ticket at all. As far as he was the perfect citizen, as long as he was a Minnesota Timberwolf or a Boston Celtic. You never heard of him outside the marriage, whatever. That, once again, that's none of my business. He never did anything that you went, wow, man, that's a bad stain or a bad mark, not only on him, but now on my team and myself as a fan of this team. You know what I mean? He didn't do those things. And that was a young kid that was doing that. Where Ja Morant's been around the block a couple of times, couple of seasons, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And that's why I get so fired up about it.
Well, to your point, and I don't know the whole what happens behind the doors when you sign a contract, get into the NBA, whatever. For a company as big as the NBA is, and for as wealthy as these organizations are, don't you think every player should be required to go through these classes and should be given these tools to succeed? And I'm sure they are, but I think at this point it's probably free will amongst the players. But at this point, like when it's this big, like sports are this big in American culture, and you have to deal with A, B, and C, like to to me, it should almost be a requirement to have to go through these things and understand this is what's going to happen. This is how you deal with it.
And I understand you're an adult at that time, but like we had, in college, we had kids that would come up if they were, from a state like Florida and they'd come up to play at River Falls. You might have them stay with a host family or something like that, just because you're not talking about folks that are too much older. In some cases, like with Ticket, he was 19 years old when you know what I mean? And so obviously you can't demand that they have a personal assistant, or more than an assistant, almost like a legal guardian, but back to what we originally talked about, you're talking about kids that maybe are coming from nothing, never had anything in their lives before. And I know what it was like when I got my first paycheck, man. I'm like, oh, I can just spend. And didn't understand that there were bills that came along. You can't spend your paycheck right away when you have rent to pay, gas to pay, insurance to pay, electricity, all of those things. But I had to find that out the hard way. You know what I mean? Like, you don't pay them, those things get shut off. You're talking about at a bigger level, in the millions and millions areas. And so that's not a bad idea. I just don't know where you would start on something like that.
Well, no, and I don't know. And it doesn't need to be like, 35-year-old Mike Conley's got a person to help him deal with the famous portion. But to your point, like even myself at 24 or you at 50, like if you threw us in now, like, I mean, I like to think that I grew up pretty well but you threw me into that environment now, like I would need help. Like I don't know how I would do that. So I can feel for some of these guys, but yeah, like I think there needs to be maybe some more resources, because it almost feels like it's becoming not even just the NBA, but across sports. It's becoming a larger topic of concern. So
right, I saw what your boy Wando got picked up down in the Dominican.
My boy.
I just said that because we talked about him before, I think, on the show. For what, not failing to turn himself in or something like that? Is that the deal?
Well, so more details had come out about that. I don't know if you saw, but he was paying the girl, I think, $100,000 a month or something. But also his mom was paying the girl's mom money as well. So like there was a whole family thing in it, and it's amazing how, forever the Tampa Bay Rays have been looking for that guy, and they don't spend much money, and finally they go after, or they get this guy and they drop millions of dollars on him, and 2 years later he's absolutely nothing. Gone. He will never play in the NBA or the MLB again.
Right. Well, now speaking of bad behavior, not that a lot of people did catch that game, but did you happen to see the Carolina Panthers Jacksonville Jaguars game last Sunday, or at least the lowlights from it?
No, that's not a game I was very much interested in watching, but no, I did not see.
Okay, so the owner of the Carolina Panthers, David Tepper, I think his name is, multi-billionaire. He's in his suite, and it's not even a home game. It's at Jacksonville, I believe, and everyone's booing him because of obviously the product that he has put together. So he throws a drink at him. He throws his cocktail at him from his suite, hits somebody, and I think the fine was $300,000. And so my question to you is, because I watched this on Pardon the Interruption a little bit, which I don't ever watch that show, but I just happened to catch it because I'm not working these days because it's Christmas break. And they were both upset. I like the guys on Pardon the Interruption, but they were both upset because $300,000 to a multi-billionaire, they said it's like, fine, you got to pay $100. It's not going to really make a deal. The NFL is scared to do their deal with the good old boys because they just let them do whatever they want. Any fan caught throwing a drink at any player or owner or anything like that would be banned for life in the stadium. Your thoughts? I just find it funny that he's not even in his own stadium and he's getting booed by folks, which brings me back to Norm Green years with the North Stars, which is way before your time. But your thoughts on that?
Well, like, so I think about like one of the qualities I absolutely love about people, organizations, whatnot. My biggest thing is accountability. And to your point, like if I were to go throw a drink at Mark Laurie in the sideline at a Timberwolves game, I'm banned for life, maybe arrested for assault, whatnot. But if he were to throw a drink at me, it would be a completely different punishment. And to your point, like $300,000. And this is my first time hearing this, so these are just my first thoughts on it. But like, I mean, yeah, like to your point, like that's like $50 just out of the pocket. Like, okay, whatever.
See, now they were talking about part of the.
I was saying maybe he needs someone to help him through the fame and fortune because goddamn, like, yeah, your team won like what, 1 or 2 games this year.
Yep, 2.
Yeah, they absolutely should boo you.
So right, and you know, it's funny because, well, I don't know. As far as being held accountable, I believe now, pardon the interruption, was asking that he should have been suspended from going to games for 1 or 2 games. I don't really know what that does to an owner if they're told that they can't go to the game. I do remember, though, it brought me back to a point. So the year before the Minnesota North Stars left for Dallas, and which I never understood why they never became the Dallas Lone Stars. They're just the Stars. But so Norm Green was the owner at the time and already decided that he was going to move and head south. And he could not go to a North Stars home game any longer at the Met Center because of obviously the reception he got wherever he was at in that building. And that's from employees all, you're not paying my checks any longer, so I can cuss you out on the stairwell, you know? And so the only games that Norm Green went to were away games. And this is why I love sports and what you talked about, holding people accountable. They were at the Cow Palace in San Jose, California, playing the Sharks, and Norm Green was walking around very confidently because he was in a non-Minnesota state, and San Jose Sharks fans came up and poured a beer right over his head and said, "That's for doing what you're doing to hockey and what you're doing to the Minnesota North Stars." And once again, now I don't think those guys went to jail, but I salute them wholeheartedly because you're holding somebody accountable. That was one of my favorite stories because, I mean, I painted my car, Norm Green sucks, because I had a beater car, a hoopty that you could do stuff like that. But it just brought me back, the Tepper deal brought me back to memories of that whole Norm Green debacle way back when.
I think fans would do that. Like MLB fans would do that too. I can't remember the owner of the Las Vegas Athletics,
yes, right.
But I think absolutely anyone, because it's a tough thing for baseball at this point.
Yep.
So
Yep. And I do remember I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait, Norm Green got a beer poured over his head in San Jose by opposing fan. Why? And it was like, because people who know the sport and understand what it means for people to support these teams wherever you're at, except if you're Green Bay fans, it's a hard deal. And so you respect, there's like a camaraderie or a fraternity when it comes to sports fans all the way across the board, you know? That's why it's so cool. And that's why we make a podcast about it. I'll tell you, I was watching a show with my buddy Perm the other day, and they were interviewing a guy who had a pirate treasure podcast. Now that means his whole podcast was dedicated to who he thought, which pirates in the world might have a treasure. So he's never traveled to any of these places, just his theories. And I was like, how do you have a whole fucking podcast about pirate treasure? At least we have something that we can talk about on every single day.
Hey, as much as the internet is weird, and I don't think anyone can talk about whatever the hell they want and have
Right.
fun doing it. So man, it is what it is. But yeah, go talk about it. Go for it. I don't know.
Right on. Right on. All right. Well, I'm going to start watching the Wild game because I can't watch the Gopher game. You got anything else you want to cover? Because I feel like I was all over the page today, but it felt good because there were just things that kind of came organically and some things that I did want to talk about. Your thoughts?
Oh, hey, that's a nice sweatshirt. Where'd you get that?
Oh yeah, that's a show to be named later. Now you can't buy those in stores, but that is a show to be named later sweatshirt that a really cool guy got that for me for Christmas this year. But do you know more about these sweatshirts? Because I don't know where he got it from.
Well, you can buy them if you go to the link in the bio of this video or go to our the homepage of our YouTube channel. It'll take you right to our website, and you can get all of that merch right there. We have the updated logo. Do you want to explain that logo right there?
Well, now this was the original logo. The show to be named later, of the fans, by the fans, for the fans. That was the original logo from 20 some years ago when we did a show on Care 11. Noah was just a little baby, so he didn't know about it at that time. But yeah, that's the original logo from way back when the Ticket used to watch the show.
Absolutely. So, Kevin Garnett, if you're watching, and we know you are, you can go get your sweatshirt right there at theshowtobenamed.later.com.
And it's not only sweatshirts, right? Like I think I got a hat from this guy, and I got a little mat that I can put my doggy dish, the water dish and the food dish on. So you can get all kinds of shit, right?
Yep. So, if you're fans of the show right now, go get your updated logo. If you were fans of the show back in 03, 04, whatever it may be, you can go get your retro merch and rep it and be fans of the show and help support us as well. If you were also a fan of supporting us and what we do, there's a link in the bio of this video, and as well as on the homepage of our YouTube channel. You can donate to the show. Even if you want to donate $1, it helps us out. So we appreciate all your support.
Right on. And I'm gonna leave us with this. Because I forgot to tell you. So I think I mentioned it maybe on a podcast a couple times ago or whatever. So my good friend Chris, his band, The Big Woo, played at First Avenue a few weeks ago. And I forgot to tell you, because this doesn't happen very often anymore. It used to happen quite frequently, 5 years, even into 10 years after. But this random guy, he's like, "Hey, Jonny Voss, the show to be named later, the greatest show ever, the greatest sports show ever." And I'm like, "Oh, you watched the podcast? That's great." And he's like, "What's a podcast?" No, I'm talking about the show you guys did on Channel 11. It was great. And he just went out and started telling everybody about this show that we did on television. I just kept, whispering in his ear, "Hey, tell him we got a podcast now too." So anyways, I thought that was cool because that to date is the longest period of time. I believe that was 2005 when we were doing the show. So 18 years, now 19 years, still getting recognition from that from way back when. So felt good.
Yeah. And another thing we're doing now that we've hit the new year, obviously we are a fan show. We're not journalists. We're just here to chat about our opinions. We want you on the show. We want to just talk sports. So
yes.
If you're interested, let us know. Mondays, we're going to try to have anyone on. Like, we're
gonna hook up. Yeah, maybe we'll go with a Green Bay correspondent based on what happens over this Sunday's batch of games.
Well, there's some guy on Facebook talking shit about the Vikings. I believe he was a Packer fan, so maybe we bring him in. He never responded when I said we should have him on the podcast. So if you're listening, we know you are. Let's get you on here. But
yeah. And even that being said, like, as well as, things that we talk about on the show, you guys just got comments about, what we're talking about. Love to hear what your opinions are. Don't care if they're negative or positive. It doesn't matter. Just curious what you think about what we're talking about,
Absolutely. We like, if you want to come on the show, we do not care who you are. I don't care if you have one follower on Instagram or you got 100,000. Like, let's just talk sports. That's the best part about this show.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, I'm going to say a couple things to sign off here. First of all, lots of love to my boy Perm. God bless you, man. Hope to see you back very, very soon. And I'll also say, considering what today is, Mom and Dad, miss you very, very much. Hope to see you again very, very soon. For Noah Stoerzinger, I'm Jonny Voss, the Show to Be Named Later podcast. We will see you next time.